Bob Babbitt here, and we're at You Can Legends of Running series, and our two guests today. I'm so excited to have both of them with us. Two-time Foot Locker national champion, and he held the American record at 5,000 meters, 12:56.27. Three-time national cross-country champion, Mr. Dathan Ritzenhein, and of course, the legend Meb Keflezighi, who has won New York, won Boston, silver medal in Athens. Hey guys, thanks so much for taking time to chat.
Thanks,
hey,
Bob. Thanks for having us.
Awesome to have you guys. Now, this is obviously was supposed to air on Global Running Day. Things are a little crazy in the world right now. Give me your thoughts on really what's happening in the world right now and what we need to do to get past it.
It is a crazy time in the world, with the COVID-19 and with the new situation also with the George Floyd in Minnesota, and one punch after another. This is a time where kindness and a genuine love for each other should be, and kind of respecting the rules and obeying the rules because of social distancing. And with the protesting, where I'm up for protesting and in a safe manner, but it's a tough time for all of us. But our prayers and thoughts are with the George Floyd and his family and whatnot, and because the videos gives you just a chill and unbelievable. And to be a Black American in here is including myself, I've been stopped many times for no reason, including in Minnesota, where I got a ticket for warning, but that could have been the end of it as well. So it is a really tough time, but I hope we can unite. As running, as Dathan says, we always, when you run against each other or with each other, you don't know what that person's belief is. You just say, hey, you want to go 5K, 10K, half marathon, full marathon, and that's the beauty of running. And hopefully people can translate their energy to that and end up police brutality eventually.
Yeah, right now it's a crazy time in the world, but I think we're seeing all these things, all these emotions going on, and there's demonstrations, and but we're trying to drive through, I think, a lot of problems that have gone on forever. So we're just seeing it right now. Maybe a lot of people that don't feel that every day, and so I think we're trying to take it as a learning experience like anything else, and try to. That's what we do in running too. We try to come together, and I think I see that right now too. Like, how can we bridge the gap? How can we come together? How can we understand one another? And so as that's happening right now, I know metaphors of running, but I don't know like the plight that a lot of people go through either. So, being able to talk to other people, I think is going to be, that's huge. And so, we're talking today, but the greater conversation, I think, is what has to happen too.
So guys, do you remember when you guys first ran against each other, your first meeting?
Hey, Dathan.
And I probably remember more than Meb, because Meb was already really good by then, but Meb, I think was probably did you run in the 2001 in the 5K at the U.S. National Championships? I don't know if you did or not.
I did not. I did a 10K
okay.
because I was injured. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we ran at the trials for the World Cross Country Championships, and we made the team together. And Meb, that was 2002. It was for Dublin, and I had seen him run the year before because I made the junior team, and watching him, him and Abdi, and I think it was Bob Kennedy was on the team, and so I remember watching those guys then, and then on the team next year, I was only 19 years old, but I got to make the senior team with those guys. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was an exciting time. I think Ostend in Belgium was when I saw Dathan Ritzenhein, and somebody going, that's Dathan who made the junior team. I'm like, man, he is made for running, And this is before the race, and he got the bronze medal that day, and just knew that he was raw talent. And for over the years, I see him as the guy like me, who has the tenacity to be tough and hardworking and disciplined to be able to just get a lot out of himself. We all have different talents, but the closest I could get similarity in terms of talent was Dathan, and to see him what I've accomplished over the decades is amazing. All the way the range from the 5K all the way to the marathon.
Yeah.
Can't win all races, but we could definitely learn from each other, and to be competing against him always you got to be on top of your game, because when Dathan shows up healthy, even 80% is a tough one to get rid of or to beat him. So it's, we have mutual respect each other. And I think, but we always made each other respect each other, but as fierce competitors as we are
Right.
when the gun goes off, but we have mutual respect eventually.
You guys both had really long careers, and how did you have to adapt, just in terms of your training, to try to stay at the top of the pyramid like both of you did for so long?
I had just a long career because I still felt like Meb went so long that if I stopped any years earlier, that it looked like I got out of the game too early.
You were a poser, yeah.
Yeah, Meb was running so well for so long that it was like if I stopped when I was in my early 30s, it meant that I really gave up way too early. So he was an inspiration, like truthfully, like him and I see it now, like Abdi made his Olympic team at is he going to be 45 now once the Olympics come around? He's going to be collecting Social Security before too long. But having a long career really, I think you have to love what you're doing, and that was one of the things I always saw with Meb. He never forgot like the little things. Like I think he still loved training, and you start to love things a little bit less, but he would still always do those things. He'd go and he'd grab his drink right away afterwards. He was doing his active isolating stretches right away afterwards. And so I never lost that either, I think, all the way to the end. I always liked to be fit and I liked to train. And at the end of the day, the competition was just, that was just validation for all the work put in, I think. And so, you can't do it for all those years. You can't fake it if you don't love it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And Meb, for you, in terms of trying to maintain, because obviously your career lasted a long time, and there was a point in, after with the Olympic trials in 2008 that your career could have been over, and you probably had your greatest years after that.
Yeah, absolutely. As Dathan alluded to, it's just, you got to have fun. You got to enjoy it. And, we love competing. When we compete, we're trying to see what that hard work is going to pay off. And sometimes it does pay off and other times it doesn't, because, you train so hard rigorously year in, year out. And sometimes it's like you hit under the ballpark, whether it's running for Dathan under American record the 5K or winning the world half marathon medal, and things like that. Or sometimes you get setbacks also. It's like, oh, but if I could only stay healthy and I could, for like he said, I read his article when he retired and going to the NCAAs, he was going injured. He wasn't even there, but it makes you believe that you still got it on 80% or 75%. If I can achieve this, I can always do that. So those things keeps you going, because, I think you always want to look for the long-term goals, but you got to be in the moment. And where are you at 80%? Where are you at 90%? Where are you when you're 100%? And it's a beautiful thing to know that, hey, when I'm 100%, I can beat anybody in the world. And when I'm 80%, I want to be in the top 3 or top 5. And then that helps you set goals. And for me, I think the longevity has been doing the small things that make a big difference, from stretching to ice bath to massages to doing the drills and to eating right, sleeping right. And I've been very fortunate to have Jordanos to be able to allow me to do that, because, we have to have the support system amazingly, because we might run the races, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of, as you can see my backdrop on the video, there's so many people that are involved and make you who you are. And we might run the 26.2 or half marathon, but so many people help you contribute to your success. Nobody does it alone, but we're there to support each other and encourage each other, and hopefully being a good example to the next generation.
So Dathan, when I look back, it's hard for me to believe that, you won Foot Locker back in '99 and 2000. And in 2000, when you won, it was Dathan Ritzenhein and Alan Webb and Ryan Hall. Like 3 guys like that. When you think back, well, one, who would have thought you'd still be running 20 years later? And when you think back to that race, how special was that for you to not only beat those guys, but that was to win back-to-back at Foot Locker?
Yeah, that was great. It was man, it was so long ago. It's like it's still burned in my memory a little bit. One of those moments where, I got to relive a lot of that a couple of weeks ago when I retired. And I don't know, it made me a little nostalgic, I guess,
Yeah.
And then I was able to do a podcast with Alan and Ryan, and Alan's all old and Ryan's huge, doesn't look like anything else, now. And I was like, man, I ran all the way up until this, a couple of weeks ago. And it just made me feel a little nostalgic, but also, I mean, that was like my first real experience with really big, like they brought in, they had people that were, professional runners that would come in, like Dina and Alan Culpepper, Jen Rhines. They were there at the meet, and that was like my first experience, really, even before I got to race against Meb, like the next year and after that with the U.S. Junior Cross Country Championships. That was the first experience I had with those pro runners and stuff, and so it was pretty awesome to be able to relive that kind of started back then, and then to see Alan go on and run American record in the mile. And he ran 3:53 in high school for the mile, and then Ryan went on and was American record in the half marathon, and he was training with Meb and stuff like that. It was just it's all cyclical. It's a small world, but it's pretty cool to look back 20 years.
So Meb, and actually for both of you guys, there was obviously a period where American distance running was not great, and it was really, and I think both of you were big believers in altitude. Coach Larson's whole philosophy in V-Hill was, hey, the Africans aren't necessarily better because they're Africans. They're better because they're training in groups and they're training in altitude. And Dathan, I know you've done a lot of altitude work. Meb, obviously, when Coach Larson took you guys up to Mammoth, talk a little bit about just the change in perception of American running from really 99, 2000 up through the next couple decades, because the U.S. became a factor and you guys led that charge.
I think Coach Joe V-Hill and Coach Bob Larson were the visionary of they wanted something positive for U.S. distance running. I mean, Dathan was smarter because he went to altitude for college, And I remember the first time I ever went to Mammoth, I didn't go as a freshman because I want to focus on a freshman summer program class that I took. And then sophomore year I went, I'm like, wow, this is beautiful. I mean, I said, why can't they move UCLA to Mammoth Lakes, but Dathan figured that out. So I kind of fell in love with it. And I'm like, because you can train hard, but smart, but also the dirt were endless. I mean, the dirt was just amazing. And for a distance runner, that was a beautiful thing. And I said, if I could ever afford it by any means, I would love to move up to Mammoth. And that opportunity provided. And Coach Larson, I remember having a talk as well. The Kenyans, the Ethiopians, Haile Selassie, Paul Turgot, they're running at altitude, and we should try that. And I remember I thought I was crazy. I brought my first house in Mammoth Lakes in 2002. I said, I want to be like them. And if I'm going to compete Ghost guys, might as well invest, And I remember calling my dad and my brother. I'm like, I'm doing something crazy, but I got to trust it, because they are 400 miles away from my parents, brother and sister. So growing up with a big family was, important to me, but you got to sacrifice. You got to be able to put that into work. And Dina Castor, and there was Jen Rhines was there, Amy Rudolph was there, and so many others, Matt Downen, and eventually I became a little bit Ryan Shea. So it helped, I think, to have a train group and then see what we can do. And it's a small progress that they envisioned. They probably thought we could win 2008 and things like that. Running USA was founded in 2001, but and then broke the American record in the 10K. That's when Mammoth got its attention, and then Dina broke the American record, and then eventually both of us, 3 years later, we became a Olympic medalist in the marathon, both silver and a bronze medal. And it wasn't Kenya, it wasn't Ethiopia, it wasn't anywhere else. It was two people from the United States within a mile of each other. And I think that was kind of for the young generation following, like Dathan or others, like, well, if these guys went through NCAAs or high school and won medals, and we can do that. I think that was kind of the resurgence of U.S. distance running.
And Dathan, you go along with that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's like anything. It's like a tide that happens, right? And you start to move with it. And I think, what Meb said is that we had, I think for a long time, maybe in the period of the 90s, it was just, I don't want to say that we were complacent, but we didn't know what we were doing. We just kind of floundered, right? And we thought we could be pretty good, but, when we wanted, looking at what the East African countries were doing that were dominating running, you're right. It wasn't that they were just because they were African. It was that they were training in groups. They were living a lifestyle like that. They were at altitude, and all those things we started trying to I think, adopt in that period of time. And Mammoth, Team USA was really one of the first real founding groups of that. And I used to train with the Hansons. They started that, and it started getting these groups of people. And so we said, I think you look at it like, are you that much better that you can just stay at home and do your thing and be better? No, we have to. These guys are training so hard. They're training at altitude. They're training in groups. They're living for this lifestyle of running, and it's not enough to just sit here and play video games and eat cereal and try to run 90 miles a week. It just doesn't cut it, And those guys in that period of time, they started that, and I think my next generation of people, Ryan and Alan, and we came right on the coattails of that period of time. And so it was like, you have to have someone pull you along, someone to show you, like to help build that momentum. And it created slowly. And then when Meb and Dina won medals in Athens in 2004, I mean, I remember it vividly, and then it moved on the next games in 2008. We were better. And then in 2012 and 2016, we've just been better and better. And I think now we're just not complacent anymore. It's become a professionalized sport too, where it was maybe just scattered. And so now opportunity is everything, but we also, those opportunities were created, I think, in that period of time 20 years ago.
Were you guys both thinking when you were in college that, okay, when I'm done with college, I'm just going to move on and become a professional runner and make my living doing that? Because it wasn't pretty much assumed that, okay, you're going to come out of college and you're going to make a living as a runner, right? That was you guys were part of that early generation of doing that.
I think for me it was 1997 when I won 4 NCAA titles. That kind of says maybe I could do this for a living, but for me it was academics. Make sure I get my degree was the most important thing. Coming from Eritrea to the United States, land of opportunity, and I thought about it going pro, but then I realized one more year is not going to hurt me.
And for you, Dave, when did you feel like, okay, I can make a living doing this?
I think, for me, when I decided, I went to the University of Colorado, and I think I was instantly then surrounded by other runners, Adam Goucher, Kara was just coming out as out of school the year before too. And Alan Culpepper was still training in there in town. And so I started to see other runners that were pros. And so I went to college. I mean, I got to say, it might sound bad, but I went to college strictly to run,
Right.
and I got a degree because of it, but that was my sole goal, I think. And I guess I didn't even think about at the time that I would be able to make a living for so many years doing it. And it really, looking back, it's a blessing, but also, man, I'm also lucky. There's so few people that get that opportunity to really make a living in a sport like that. And so to be able to do it for a long time, that's I count myself very blessed.
So Meb, after the Olympic trials in 2008, you had a hip injury that basically the next morning when the marathon was happening, when the marathon, the regular New York City Marathon for everybody else was happening, you had to crawl to the window to see what was going on outside. Your hip was that bad. Was there a point during that next number of months or a year where you thought, you know what, my career could be over?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it was December, a month later, that I was in San Jose and talked to my brother and sisters about potentially retiring. But before I left the hotel, I remember Jordanis and I got our knees and prayed, because I think she's like, I can't see it like that. I was on my knees and elbows. If I want to go to the restroom, or if I want to go to get something from my luggage or go to the window, I was crawling. There's no way I could stand up. So I was use my hand to flip one side of the bed to the other side. If I want to sit, I have to use my hand to lift my leg up. But I didn't realize I had that injury. I think I was disappointed that I didn't make the Olympic team, but I was also frustrated that a good friend of mine, Ryan Shea, passed away. So I was sitting, I didn't even realize that when we did the press conference, but I was sitting next to him going to the starting line, and all those things kind of, mentally, emotionally, and physically, I was depleted. And I thought about retiring. And if it was silver medal was okay, I'm good with that. If the American record 27-13, I'm good with that. And but I know God had something else planned for me. And I remember internally, I knew, even Ryan Hall was saying, hey, I just want to be on that ticket to Beijing. So he knew what I was doing. And he ran amazingly. And so now going to the Olympic hurt, but put life in perspective for me. Don't take it for granted. Just rehab whatever you need to do. And who knew that? At that point, I remember jokingly I said, my Olympics is going to be the New York City Marathon. And honestly, when I said that, I thought it was going to be 2008 instead of 2009. But that was my goal. I said, I can't wait another 4 years. I want to be able to win, hopefully, New York. That's going to be my Olympic medal. And it took me a year and a half to do therapy. Yeah, I was scheduled for surgery, but Jordanos and Coach Larson and Dr. Van Camp, who was my mentor, asked me to get a second opinion. Mm-hmm. And they thought it was abdominal tear instead of a pelvis chest fracture. So it could have gone south right away, but having a second opinion. And God bless Dr. Louis Meheran from New York. He diagnosed it and he says, 10 weeks ago, you had pelvis chest fracture. The hip is finally filling up, but he didn't, he thought it was going to be a cortisone shot on my glutes. And he said, you don't need to do that. You don't need surgery. You just need to take time off. And then been in the sport, you have to rush it to trying to make the obligation of Nike's contract. If you don't make the Olympics, you're going to get a pay cut. So I said, you know what, I need to come back faster. And then, it kind of set me a setback again. I re-injured it again. But if it was just clear, say, hey, take 8 weeks, 10 weeks, or 12 weeks off, and then I would have made a good comeback.
And then the following, when you go to New York City Marathon 2009, right? And no American had won there in 30 years. When you end up winning that race, did you surprise yourself?
No, I mean, it was always my dream to win New York and Boston. I mean, for me, yes, I was disappointed I didn't go to Beijing, but for me, it was more meaningful if I could win Boston or win New York. Those were the things that I have not accomplished. Unless I win a gold, winning another medal is not going to, be more marketable or be able to give me a notoriety. So when I won New York City Marathon, I was ready. I mean, I ran 1:01 half marathon in San Jose by myself, and I thought I was ready, maybe overdone it, but it's just, you got to make it that day count, and to be able to pull that victory in New York City Marathon with the USA jersey, that was my personal Olympic gold medal that I never won or didn't go to Beijing to defend my title. So I was, it was a revenge time for me. I'm like, I'm going to come after you. And I didn't say it publicly, but internally I'm burning up. I want to be able to just be competitive as much as I can, and to have, the 4-time Boston champion, and to have Jim Scomby, who ran a 2:04 something, and 4:28, I believe. I think New York was the stacked field I ever assembled at that time, and to be able to win it with the USA jersey and come Central Park chanting USA. I'm sure I was pointing to the flag, not where the Nike was. So it was cognitively and all that stuff. So I was proud to be able to represent our country and be able to win the victory. And after 30, I believe it was 30 years, 28, 27 years.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So for you, Ritz, when I look at the 2012 year, right, it's sort of like the tale of two cities. Here you are, you go to the Olympic marathon trials in 2012, and I think it was 47 seconds separating first and fourth, right? Meb goes 2:09:08, and Ryan Hall's 2:09:30, and then Abdi, and you were like 8 seconds out of the Olympic spot, right? It's like, there's nothing worse than getting fourth in the Olympic trials, right? So now you're going to the trials for the 10,000, and very seldom do people go from long to short. Right? You go from the 5,000 and you trade for 10,000. Go from the 10,000 to the marathon, but to go from the marathon and then to try to get fast enough, because you didn't just have to finish first, second, third. You also had to run the A standard, right?
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's a little bit of pressure, right?
Man, 2012 was a year. Yeah. It started horrible. I mean, starting in, fourth at the trials, like I thought I was, a lot of it had been that I had had a great year in 2009, set the American record, bronze medal at the World Half Marathon Championships. And I remember, thinking it was like 3 weeks later was New York. And I was like, and I watched Meb do it. This is like the first week back from a break, and I'm watching Meb on TV as I'm riding the bike or something like that. I was like, I just couldn't believe my mind watching him do that, So I got out like right away after it, 2010 was just, I mean, it wasn't a great year for me. I was coming off from this high, and I made it through the year doing okay, but I had some injuries kind of going on. And then 2011, I was like, I was complete mess. I had 2 surgeries on my Achilles, 1 in my foot. And so I went from just high, and then down to low. And then when I came into the trials, I had done everything I could in just those couple of months to get there. Like, I mean, the wound on my leg had barely healed about 3 months beforehand. And so when I missed the team by 8 seconds, I was just completely devastated. And, I think that I had started to see myself as this marathoner, and this is the only track now for me. And so that it was a daunting thought for me to go back to running on the track, because even though my last track race had been an American record, it had been 3 years. And so I was starting to feel like, man, it just seems like a big ask. So I still did everything I could. I switched back. I got into spikes, which I hadn't done in years. And it didn't come super easy though. Like it was a whole spring of grinding it out. And I just didn't have that standard, which is so important because it had been so many years of not running on track. And that's one of the things that we used to always have to chase those standards. And we would try to get the 10K standard a lot of times the year before, because then you didn't have to worry about it going into it that year. And I tried a couple of times, but it was just like bad things would happen. I went to one race, it was like 80 degrees, like at Hengela, which is always perfect for running a 10K. And it was horrible. And so when I lined up at the trials in June in Eugene, I knew that I had to run the standard, which is going to be, it was 27:40 something like that. And I knew that I was going to have to push the pace because no one else is going to want to that had the standard. And sure enough, like right before, it was perfect out, and I was like, okay, this is finally going to happen. And right minutes beforehand, the skies opened up and it rained so hard that the steeple pit was overflowing. It was 55 degrees and pouring rain, and I remember standing there on the start line, and rain is just pouring down, and it's dripping in your face, and they're introducing people, and I was like, this can't get any harder. This is just crazy, And so I was just super overwhelmed when I made that team. Crossing the finish line was very, very emotional for me. And so to make that team after the disappointment of the 2 years before was huge. And so I went to the Olympics, and it was fine, but like I didn't compete great, but I still had that thing that marathon in the back of my head. And I had ran okay. I just hadn't hit it yet. And so I took that speed from the track, and finally I was healthy for a whole year. That was one of the things that was very big going into the 2012 Chicago Marathon for me, is I just had never been healthy for more than 3 or 4 months for, like that. And going into a marathon, it was like, I could run 120 miles a week, but you still have to run off from the 6 months before that. And so I had that finally going in, and I ran 2:07:47, and it was just like, I was like that too, like just like radar lock on that day.
Tunnel vision.
Yeah.
You were there. That's so cool. Hey, and so for Meb, when we go into something similar to what we're dealing with now with tragedy, when you've got a tragedy like what happened at Boston in 2013, and people died, and there's bombings in the street, and our sport is all about love and caring and just getting the best out of yourself and challenging yourself. You were there at the finish line in 2013, and it seems like at that point you pretty much vowed that you were going to be coming back and racing, because I think some people were scared to come back in 2014 to Boston. What was your mindset going into that race?
Yeah, I think, Dathan making that Olympic team was pretty exciting. I was in the stand, and to be in Eugene, who knew everything that was going on, it was pretty thrill for you.
Yeah.
Including myself. But yeah, I think setbacks are part of life. I think injuries are part of sport, and disappointment are part of life. And we are going through it right now. And I think in 2013 Boston Marathon, I was signed up, by finishing 4th at the Olympic Games in 2012 London, that allowed me to be invited to the Boston Marathon. And we're excited, and Abdurrahman and Ryan Hall and myself were entered, but we all felt injured and we scratched from the race. And I'm like, well, we need an American up there just to run hard, even if it means 10 miles. But don't let the emotion take you, and you know, try to control it, try to be patient. And that red day, I ran a few miles, and I don't get to see my fellow runners at the finish line. I usually do drug testing or media obligation, but that day I'm like, let me just get the grandstand. So I went inside and watched the race, you know, from the wheelchairs to the men and women finish. And I remember sending a text to Ryan Hall. I think 2:10:03 or something won it. And I said, we can do this. And he said he was flying that day, so we'll get after or something. And eventually after I had an appointment, that's why I left the stand, because I wanted to watch the runners. I have people run for the foundation. And then I left 5 minutes before the bombing happened. And I left my brother Howie there and went to the Fairmont Copley. And next thing I know is I was walking the lobby. Somebody from John Hancock got a radio in that said there's a bombing. I'm like, how can it be? There's no way. And I remember just throwing the F-bomb and start crying, and you feel helpless. You know, there's nothing, how can it be possible? But that afternoon, I remember Bonnie Ford from ESPN asked me that evening, she says, Meb, are you scared to come back, or are you not going to have your kids and wife and things like that? I said, Bonnie, I remember telling her, I hope to be healthy enough to win it for the people. That was my mission. My mindset was like, we got to get back at this. And so that's 36,000 other people wanted to do that. They wanted to change something that showed resilience and perseverance and, you know, not give up, because something does wrong doesn't mean the whole thing should be shut down and whatnot. So we had over 365 to think about it. And, you know, Boston was Boston strong. And, you know, when the Red Sox wanted, put the trophy at the finish line. And I remember telling my massage person, I was getting massaged that moment, I said, Gary Ockman, I said, I want to do that for runners on Patriots Day, you know? So you have those dialogue, you keep saying it. And God willing, it happened, you know, when the race unfolded on April 21st, 2014. And I was 2 weeks shy of my 39th birthday. I was the 15th guy in the field, and the expert had me less than 1% chance of winning. But you got to believe in yourself, your team, and your training. And I did that. And I went to Mammoth Lakes away from family for about 3.5, 4 weeks. And I knew I was ready. And now we just got to be 90% mental. Got to be are you willing to hurt a little more than others? And, you know, when the race unfolded, I went for it. And, you know, you see the emotion. It's like a Tour de France. So people were out, they were supporting, they were chanting USA, they were doing the waves. But you got to hold your composure. And I don't remember going through the tunnel vision or being focused. I don't remember going through the halfway point at all. I don't. And, you know, it's Wesley College where there's a lot of ladies and all that stuff. I don't remember it.
You don't remember any of that?
I remember any of it. I was just so focused. And, you know, and then about having done the Boston Marathon, I knew where I was and I wanted to be by myself. So Joseph Boy was running with me. And about 15 miles into it, I threw a fast one. And after that, I was just kind of wearing watch going up and down. And I was within myself. Boston is point to point and you can't see, there's not a lot of turns. You just hope that nobody catches you. And with 5K left in the race, I looked something to my right and I said, there's an orange shirt. I don't know who it is and what credential he has. So I'm like, well, don't slow down now, because if he slows down, he's going to have the mental edge to try to maintain the gap, trying to extend the gap. And I know people say, why do you look back so much? But I was trying to measure that gap, whether it's getting closer or not. So, and with 1 mile to go, that circle sign couldn't come fast enough. I've been looking for that forever. And I knew that at that point, I'm like, if he was feeling good, he should have been with me, but he must be hurting. So I'm willing to dig a little more deeper. And I remember I had the victim's name on my bib, and I just said, give me your energy, give me your strength, push me forward. And with 1K to go on the overpass, I remember, why do they have to have this sign? Because he's going to think, if he's a Kenyan or Ethiopian, he's going to think 3-minute pain. He's going to put the hammer down, 3-minute pain. I said, well, lean forward, just the small details make a big change. Lean forward, chin down, and up. When you go up, quick feet, arm action. And there was finally a turn on Hereford. And I said, well, now he can't see you. Just try to sprint as hard as he can, make the gap look bigger, and hopefully he'll give up. And then going on Boston, I crashed myself. I said, well, I know it's going to look like the finish line's right there, but I know for a fact it's like 600 meters away.
It's
so
a long way.
Don't celebrate. Don't pull a hamstring. Keep. If you pick up, the police going to pick up. If you slow down, they're going to slow down. So, but it was a thrill of a lifetime to chant USA, USA, going down and do the cross where the bombing happened. And, you know, you don't plan for those moments, but, you know, I just feel blessed that God gave me the strength to be able to come to that finish line. And with 36,000 people wanting to do the same thing, I've just been the fortunate one to lead them to the finish line.
And Meb, being an Olympic silver medalist and winning New York, but this was different because this is something, the bombing affected everybody, right? You got Barack Obama isn't normally tweeting about Meb Keflezighi. Now he is, right? How did that change your life? Just that win, that moment.
Oh, I mean, it's the most meaningful victory in my life. I mean, you always want it. It says in high school, college, Olympic dreams to win silver and whatnot, or New York, your own personal gratification. But the Boston Marathon, I mean, that was the pinnacle of what happened the year before. And, it changed my life. And I remember, Howie's the guy at the White House. We're trying to get hold of Howie and United States Track and Field, United States Olympic Committee. And so he's like, we're doing so many phone calls or FaceTime and things like that. And then the phone came. It's like, still call. And it was going to be unknown number from 8 to 12. The White House is going to get a call. And he gave me the phone. We tried to do FaceTime. We should have recorded it, but FaceTime with Canadian Channel TV. But he gave me the phone. And I'm like, what I say? And I'm like, hello, Mr. President, how are you? He's like, oh, I'm fine. It was so funny. And actually with the Air Force One, he goes, am I speaking with Meb Keflezighi? This is the commander of Air Force One. He was on the flight. And I'm like, yes, this is him. And he's like, well, I'm going to transfer to the President of the United States. I'm like, okay, thank you. And then I'm like, hello, Mr. President, how are you? And he said, I'm fine. And he goes, well, I wanted to call you to say congratulations on job well done. You made us all proud. And then I'm like, well, Mr. President, I was there in 2013. It means so much to me that you call him, but I also had a personal commitment that I wanted to do something for our country. And you hear about the politician being a politician, and he said, we'll be in touch. I'm like, yeah, right. You're going to never hear from you, but he is a man of his words, because he invited on August 5th. I remember he invited myself and a guest, which I took my wife to the White House for dinner, and with the U.S. and African Leaders Summit, and to have President Jimmy Carter there, and to have Robert De Niro and many others great leaders there.
Wow.
And to have a dinner there with them, seeing them dancing and things like that with First Lady Michelle Obama. It was pretty cool.
That's so cool.
Of a lifetime.
Hey, so Dathan, when I look at your career, just the variety, or just the range from being able to go 12:56 for 5,000 to 12:56 for 5,000 and 2:07:47 for marathon and 60 for the half. It's your variety, your range is pretty amazing. When you look back at your career, is there one race that sticks out and you look at it and go, that was the best I've ever been?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, those moments don't often come together, like where everything is like you're the best, and
Right.
that happens on that day, and like when Meb won, 2014, won Boston. That's probably like emotionally the biggest event, in running, like from
Ever.
professional running. No
Yeah.
doubt about it. Like emotionally, but he probably, I mean, he was really good, don't get me wrong, but he might have been physically better at other times. Just sometimes it doesn't come together exactly like everything on the spot, right? The race goes perfect, your fitness is perfect, you're healthy, right? And sometimes you do well despite those things. But for me, when I broke the American record, I could not possibly run faster than I did then. Like that was the fastest I could possibly run. Perfect race. I was every splits were perfect. Weather was perfect. I was fit. I was healthy. I was motivated and on fire. And that was one of those days where I'm sure I could have ran faster at distances higher, like 10K and, but I never had the chance. I never did, I didn't have those really good opportunities. And even the half marathon, when I won that bronze medal at the World Half Marathon Championships, I mean, I was fitter than that. I could have ran faster than that. It's just the race, it was a championship race, but that race when I ran 12:56, I just remember like that. I mean, I got every ounce of myself, out of that moment, and everything, like the cards laid down perfect. And so that was one of those ones where I just remember euphoric afterwards, like doing my cool down by myself in Zurich on this little field, and everybody's gone and it's dark, and you're just there with, it was very, you go from this stadium where it's crazy, it's pandemonium, and then an hour or two later you go through, your media and drug testing, and my family's there, and all the other buses are gone, and it's just me running on this little field that's lit up at night, and I just couldn't believe what had just happened. And that was a moment, like personally for me, that like a personal self-reflection moment, that I was like, I got everything I could have out of myself that day. It was almost perfect.
Love it. Hey, and Dathan, when did you find UCAN in terms of helping you with your recovery and nutrition?
About 4 or 5 years too late, because
that's Meb's secret weapon, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Meb kept it secret for so long, and I actually, I could have been that first, the first person to use UCAN successfully and beat Meb at 2009 at the New York City Marathon if I had taken, taken the advice at the time. But we had a sports physiologist that helped, Krista Austin. She helped with UCAN in the early years, especially, and so she had helped Meb, and I remember sitting down with her after my marathon in London in 2009, and Meb had ran that race too, and he wasn't even that fit. He was just coming back, from all the problem with his back and stuff like that, and that was like the stepping stone to him, winning New York. Really, like it was a marathon to get back, and he ran solid and he ran good, but he just pulled away from me at the end. And I was sitting there talking to her a couple weeks later, and I was like, and she's like, there's this new company, like Meb's been using it, and stuff. And I was like, okay. And I tried it, and I was like, I don't know. I just, I'll just keep doing what I was doing. And Meb went and won New York like 6 months later. And I was like, oh, okay. But I went back to doing all the tracks, the track stuff and things. And so I didn't really use it again until about 2014. Same person, Krista, was helping me. I was coming back from some problems. I had a back, like a sacral injury, like a stress fracture in 2014, and I was coming back from that. I had some overtraining. I was like a mess. I couldn't get back going, and so I started. I was out at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, and they sent a bunch of the stuff. I started using it, and I just spent tons of time. Like I would do like 3-hour-long workouts where I just trying to become metabolically more efficient. And I was using it then. I used it all through the winter. And then when I came to the Boston Marathon in 2015, I was really nervous because I had done all that other stuff, but I really hadn't ran a whole lot. I hadn't ran over 100 miles a week. And like in like 2 years at that point. I think it was 2 years at that point. And I was like, well, I've averaged like 80 miles a week for the last 4 or 5 months, so that's not very good. So I didn't know what to expect, but I had been using it, and I've been supplementing with some cross training and stuff too. But I had amazing long runs going into it, and so even though I didn't have the volume, my long runs were really good. And so it was something that I started using through there. And I remember it was a horrible day that day. It was 2011. It was one of those 20-mile-an-hour headwinds and cold. And I finished really well. I felt great, and I was like, I've been using it since. And so
That's
been great.
And Meb, your secret weapon, UCAN. When did you discover it?
Well, first, I'd like to apologize to Dathan. But yeah, I was introduced to it right away in 2009, and Howie and Shoba and Peter had dinner, and we kind of introduced as UCAN, and it was still a little bit, not the label that I had, it was a packet, but I want to make sure it was legit, and they were NCA and USADA approved and all that, so it was fine. And but I think when I won New York, I was doing a lot of more appearances and not running much, so I was using the protein chocolate flavor whenever I was traveling, and kept me leaner and also make me come back faster, recover. And I think I fell in love with it. I think with the UCAN, the new generation, is X generation and whatnot. This is the mentality. You can do anything you want. And after winning New York, it was just, I got introduced to it. And ever since, the first thing that goes into my body, into my system, after, intervals, tempo, or long runs, or when I'm traveling and getting stuck on a plane or whatnot, if the runways, and you can have it. It's always has been my secret weapon for many years. And I think it's a great product, but I am known for the athletic part of it. But Jonah Federman is the Jonah who was discovered for him. I mean, it was
kept him alive.
Kept him alive. His parents used to wake him up every 2-3 hours, and it wasn't meant to be for athletes. It was more for survival and keep him alive. And and I met him, I met the family and got to know them, and went to Connecticut. I had a meeting with their family and local runners. So it was just getting to know more of a family oriented, and Shoba, the CEO, has done an amazing job with the company to organic, slowly but surely growth, and it's been an amazing product, and I feel blessed to be part of their team.
Love it. Hey guys, thank you so much for taking time. This has been really, really fun to chat with two legends, Dathan Ritzenhein, Meb Keflezighi, our legends of running. Thank you guys for taking so much time. You're the best.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. Good to see you again.
Again, Bob Babbitt signing off. This is our UCAN Legends of Running. Have a great day, everybody.